Welcome to week 6 of our Management 301 class. This week we are going to cover chapter 6, Managerial Decision Making. Every organization, whether it is Boeing, Twitter, the American Red Cross, J.P. Morgan Chase, or the city of Grayson, Kentucky, grows, prospers, or fails as a result of the decisions made by its managers. Decision making, particularly in relation to complex problems, is not always easy. It is easy to look back and identify flawed decisions, but managers frequently make decisions amid ever-changing factors, unclear information, and conflicting points of view. Managers can sometimes make the wrong decision even when their intentions are right. Good decision making is a vital part of good management because decisions determine how the organization solves problems, allocates resources, and accomplishes its goals. Section 6.1 Types of Decisions and Problems. Decision is a choice made from available alternatives, and decision making is the process of identifying problems and opportunities and then resolving them. Decision making involves effort both before and after the actual choice. Management decisions typically fall into one of two categories, either programmed or non-programmed. Programmed decisions involve situations that have occurred often enough to enable decision rules to be developed and applied in the future. Such decisions are made in response to recurring organizational problems. Once managers formulate decision rules, subordinates and others can then make the decision, thus freeing managers for other tasks. For example, when staffing banquets, many hotels use a rule that specifies having one server per 30 guests for a sit-down function and one server per 40 guests for a buffet. Today, some program decisions are handled by artificial intelligence or AI. The next category is non-programmed decisions. They are made in response to situations that are unique, are poorly defined, and largely unstructured, and have important consequences for the organization. Managers in every industry face non-programmed decisions every day. Many non-programmed decisions, such as the one that of Airbus mentioned in our textbook on page 195, is related to strategic planning because uncertainty is great and decisions are complex. Decisions to develop a new product or service, acquire a company, create a new division, build a new factory, enter a new geographic market, or relocate headquarters to another city are all non-programmed decisions. Facing uncertainty and uncertainty. One primary difference between programmed and non-programmed decisions relates to the degree of uncertainty, risk, or ambiguity that managers deal with in making decisions. Every decision situation can be organized on a scale according to the availability of information and the possibility of failure. The four positions on the scale are certainty, risk, uncertainty, and ambiguity. Certainty is a situation in which all information the decision maker needs is fully available. Of course, few decisions are certain in the real world, and instead most contain risk or uncertainty. Risk is decision has a clear-cut goal or goals and good information is available, but future outcomes associated with each alternative are subject to chance of loss or failure. What you've got to also remember is even when enough information is available, managers can estimate the probability of a successful outcome versus failure. Steve Krupp, a senior managing partner at Decision Strategies International, says the following: you can't just avoid all risk because it will lead to entropy. For specific decisions, managers sometimes use computerized statistical analysis to calculate the probabilities of success or failure for each alternative. Then we come to uncertainty. Uncertainty is a situation where goals are known, but information about the alternatives and future events is incomplete. Factors that may affect decisions such as price, production costs, volume, or future interest rates are difficult to analyze and predict. Former U.S. Treasury Secretary Robert Rubin defined uncertainty as a situation in which even a good decision might produce a bad outcome. Managers face uncertainty every day. Many problems have no clear-cut solution, but managers rely on creativity, judgment, intuition, and experience to craft a response. So when we look at Exhibit 6.1, conditions that affect the possibility of decision failure, you have an organizational problem. And so the possibility of failure is on one line, and so you have low possibility of failure, and on the other extreme you have high possibility of failure. And so when you look at the category, certainty would fall under that low possibility of failure, then risk, then uncertainty, and then ambiguity. And then when you look down at the same timeline, but you use programmed and non-programmed decisions, programmed decisions would be used when there is low possibility of failure, and as you increase the possibility of failure towards higher, then it goes into non-programmed decisions. Ambiguity is goals to be achieved or problems to be solved are unclear, alternatives are difficult to define, and information about outcomes is unavailable. Ambiguity is what students would feel if an instructor created student groups, told each group to complete a project, but gave the groups no topic, no direction, or guidelines whatsoever. As a part of their role, managers have to both address current customer needs and environmental conditions and take risks to pursue innovative products, services, and technologies that will please customers in the future. A highly ambiguous situation can create what is sometimes called a wicked decision problem. Our textbook on page 198 talks about Twitter and a problem that they encountered, and I encourage you to go read that snapshot. And so the struggle that Twitter had in that illustration is an example of a wicked problem. Wicked decisions are associated with conflicts over goals and decision alternatives, rapidly changing circumstances, fuzzy information, unclear links among decision elements, and the inability to evaluate whether a proposed solution will work. Discussion activity number 1. Explain the difference between risk and ambiguity. How might decision making differ for a risky versus an ambiguous situation? Risk means a decision has a clear-cut objective or objectives. There's good information available. but the future outcomes associated with each alternative are subject to some chance of loss or failure. However, enough information is available to estimate the probability of a successful outcome versus failure. Ambiguity means that the situation is unclear, alternatives are difficult to define, and information about outcomes is unavailable. A highly ambiguous situation can create a wicked decision problem. Managers have a difficult time coming to grips with the issues and must conjure up reasonable scenarios in the absence of clear information. Ambiguity is by far the most difficult decision situation. Section 6.2, Decision-Making Models. The approach that managers use to make decisions usually follow one of three models: the classical model, the administrative model, or the political model. The choice of model depends on the manager's personal preference, whether the decision is programmed or non-programmed, and the degree of uncertainty associated with the decision. So the classical model is based on rational economic assumptions and manager beliefs about what ideal decision making should be. The management literature often advocates use of this model because managers are expected to make decisions that are economically sensible and in the organization's best interest. There's four assumptions that underlie this model. The decision maker operates to accomplish goals that are known and agreed on. Problems are precisely formulated and defined. Secondly, the decision maker strives for conditions of certainty and tries to gather complete information. All alternatives and potential results of each are calculated. Third, criteria for evaluating alternatives are known. The decision maker selects the alternative that will maximize the economic return on the organization. The decision maker is rational and uses logic to assign values, order preferences, evaluate alternatives, and make the decision that will maximize the attainment of organizational goals. The classic model of decision making is considered to be normative, which means that it defines how a decision maker should make decisions. For the most part, managers want to be as rational as possible and push toward rational decision making. This model does not describe how managers actually make decisions so much as it provides guidelines on how to strive for an ideal outcome for the organization. And here is those four assumptions that I discussed just a minute ago of the classical model. Then we go to the administrative model. The administrative model is the use of a rational decision-making process within the limits of human and environmental factors. It is considered to be descriptive, which is how managers actually make decisions in complex situations. In difficult situations such as those characterized by non-programmed decisions, uncertainty, and ambiguity, managers are typically unable to make economically rational decisions even if they want to. The administrative model of decision making is based on the work of Herbert A. Simon. Simon proposed two concepts that were instrumental in shaping the administrative model. Those two concepts are bounded rationality and satisficing. Bounded rationality is people have limits or boundaries on how rational they can be. Satisficing is choosing the first solution that satisfies the minimal decision criteria. So rather than pursuing all alternatives to identify the single solution that will maximize economic returns, managers opt for the first solution that appears to solve the problem, even if better solutions are presumed to exist. The assumptions of the administrative model are: goals are often vague and conflicting. Managers are often unaware of problems or opportunities. Third, rational procedures are not always used. Simplistic view of problems. Fourth, managers' searches for alternatives are limited. And fifth, most managers settle for satisficing. Another aspect of administrative decision making is intuition. Intuition is quick apprehension of a decision situation based on experience but without conscious thought. And there's a term here that our book covers, quasi-rationality. It's combining intuitive and analytical thought. And so what you've got to understand is good intuitive decision making is based on the ability to recognize patterns at lightning speed, as in the case of Juan Manuel Fangio insight on while racing at the Monaco Grand Prix, and that's discussed on page 202 of our textbook. But what it is you have to be able to look at everything and quickly make a decision. And intuition is kind of following your gut. You kind of sense that this is the direction that you want to go. Studies have found that effective managers typically use a combination of rational analysis and intuition in making complex decisions under time pressure. Discussion activity number 2. Using computer technology for managerial decision making is becoming more and more common. What are some of its possible advantages and disadvantages? So advantages would include increased accuracy, timeliness, reliability of information to improve managerial decision making. The disadvantages would include inputting the wrong data that produces incorrect information that will be used in substantial managerial decisions, being susceptible to confirmation bias, and being overly confident in the accuracy of the data. And one of the things that I want to point out is sometimes there is inaccuracy in the data that can lead to faulty decisions being made because of the faulty data. We then come to the third model, the political model. The third model is useful for making non-programmed decisions when conditions are uncertain, information is limited, and managers disagree about what goals to pursue or what course of action to take. When making complex organizational decisions, managers often engage in coalition building. A coalition is an informal alliance among managers who support a specific goal. Coalition building is the process of forming alliances among managers. Without a coalition, powerful groups can derail the decision-making process. Assumptions of the political model. Number 1, organizations are made up of groups with diverse interests, goals, and values. Number 2, Information is ambiguous and incomplete. Third, managers do not have the time, resources, or mental capacity to identify all dimensions and process all information regarding a problem. Decisions are the result of bargaining and discussion among coalition members. Exhibit 6.2 gives us the classical model, administrative model, and political model. The key dimensions of the classical, administrative, and political models are listed here. So in the classical model, you have clear-cut problem and goals, condition of certainty, full information about alternatives and their outcomes, rational choice by individual for maximizing outcomes. In the administrative model, you've got vague problem and goals, condition of uncertainty, limited information about alternatives and their outcomes, and then satisficing is the choice for resolving problem using intuition. Political model is pluralistic, conflicting goals, condition of uncertainty or ambiguity, inconsistent viewpoints, ambiguous information, and bargaining and discussion among coalition members. Which of these assumptions is included in the classical model of decision making? A, problems are unstructured and ill-defined. B, the decision maker strives for conditions of certainty. C, criteria for evaluating alternatives are unknown. Or D, the decision maker selects the alternative that will eliminate risk to the organization. The correct answer is B. The decision maker strives for conditions of certainty. Problems are precisely formulated and defined. The decision maker strives for conditions of certainty and tries to gather complete information. All alternatives and the potential results of each are calculated. Criteria for evaluating alternatives are known. Section 6.3, decision-making steps. We look at Exhibit 6.3, 6 steps in the managerial decision-making process, and this is also found page 205 of your textbook. Whether a decision is programmed or non-programmed, and regardless of whether managers choose the classical, administrative, or political model of decision-making, an effective decision-making process usually involves the 6 steps that are listed here. The decision requirement that managers confront takes the form of either a problem or an opportunity. So, the 6 steps in the decision-making process are: 1, recognition of a decision requirement; 2, diagnosis and analysis of causes; 3, development of alternatives; 4, selection of desired alternative; 5, implementation of chosen alternative; 6, evaluation and feedback. Step 1, recognition of decision requirement. This is where you identify a problem or an opportunity. So a problem is an organizational accomplishment is less than established goals. Opportunity, managers see potential accomplishments that exceed current goals. Then in step 2, we have the diagnosis and analysis. This is where you analyze underlying causal factors, and we ask ourselves, managers should always ask the 5 whys. It's a question-asking method used to explore the root cause underlying a particular problem. And so when you get there, what you've got to understand is the more that you can ask why, the deeper you get into it. The first why generally produces a superficial explanation for the problem. And then each subsequent why probes deeper into the causes of the problem, and then you can become aware of potential solutions. Step 3 is the development of alternatives. This is where you develop possible alternative solutions that will respond to the needs of the situation and correct the underlying causes. Step 4 is the selection of a desired alternative. It's where the best alternative is one in which the solution best fits the firm's overall goals and values and achieves the desired results using the fewest resources. Risk propensity is the willingness to undertake risk in exchange for the opportunity of gaining an increased payoff. The level of risk a manager is willing to accept will influence the analysis of the costs and benefits to be derived from any decision. So, Exhibit 6.4 can be found on page 208 of your textbook. In each of the following situations, which alternative would you choose? And as we go through this, I want you to think about which alternative you specifically would choose. First, you're the coach of a college football team, and in the final seconds of a game with the team's arch rival, you face a choice. You can choose a play that has a 95% chance of producing a tie score, or you can go for a play that has a 30% chance of victory but will lead to certain defeat if it fails. So, you're the coach. There's 30 seconds remaining. Which of these two plays would you choose? Would you choose the play that gives you a 95% chance of producing a tying score? Or would you roll the dice and call the play that gives you a 30% chance of victory, but if it doesn't succeed, it will definitely lead to defeat? As a president of a Canadian manufacturing company, you face a decision about building a new factory. You can, 1, build a plant in Canada that has a 90% chance of producing a modest return on investment, or build a plant in a foreign country that has an unstable political history. The alternative has a 40% chance of failing, but the returns would be enormous if it succeeds. And so this is an actual decision that some managers have to face. Do you build the plant in Canada that's going to give you a 90% chance of producing a decent return, or do you risk it and choose the option that gives you a 60% chance of success, but if it does succeed, the returns are going to be astronomical? And then the third, it's your senior year. It's time to decide your next move. Here are the alternatives you're considering. 1, go to medical school, become a physician, a career in which you are 80% likely to succeed, or follow your dreams and be an actor even though the opportunity for success is only about 20%. And as you can see from these illustrations and from these examples, we all go through this decision-making process in various levels. I have read how some of you want to be collegiate coaches. And some of you want to create your own businesses. And some of you are still deciding on your future and what you want to become and what you want to do with the remainder of your life. And so we go through these decision-making processes, not just in a managerial position, but also in our everyday lives. Step 5 of the decision-making process is the implementation of chosen alternative, the use of managerial, administrative, and persuasive abilities to ensure that the chosen alternative is carried out. Then step 6, evaluation and feedback. This is where you gather information to determine how well the decision was implemented and whether or not it achieved its goals. Many big problems are solved by trying several alternatives in sequence, each producing modest improvement. The thing you've got to understand is you're not always going to succeed first time. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. But the real key to success is whether you're willing to put in the work to keep trying and to keep achieving, even if you fail sometimes along the way. That brings us to section 6.4, Personal Decision Framework. So in Exhibit 6.5, on page 212 of our textbook, we have a situation: programmed, non-programmed, classical, administrative, political decision steps, plus personal decision style, directive, analytical, conceptual behavior, and that will lead to the decision choice, the best solution to the problem. Research has identified 4 major decision styles: directive, analytical, conceptual, and behavioral. Decision styles are distinctions among people with respect to how they evaluate problems, generate alternatives, and make choices. The directive style is used by people who prefer simple, clear-cut solutions to problems. People who prefer the directive style generally are efficient and rational and prefer to rely on existing rules or procedures for making decisions. Managers with an analytical style like to consider complex solutions based on as much data as they gather. These individuals carefully consider alternatives and often base their decisions on objective, rational data from management control systems and other sources. People who tend toward a conceptual style also like to consider a broad amount of information. However, they are more socially oriented than those who with an analytical style and like to talk to others about the problem and possible alternatives for solving it. The behavioral style is often the style adopted by managers having a deep concern for other individuals. Now, I will tell you, when I was working at Enterprise and I was a manager at Enterprise, the conceptual style was was my preference of style of making decisions. I like to gather as much information as possible, and then I like to meet with my assistant manager or managers and my team and say, hey, this is what we're looking at. This is where we want to get to. These are some of the obstacles. What are your thoughts? What are your inputs? What are your ideas? And the reason that I like to do that is I often find that you can get really good information from others because they can sometimes see things from a different viewpoint as you do. Section 6.5. Why do managers make bad decisions? Even the best manager will make mistakes, but managers can increase their percentage of good decisions by understanding some of the factors that cause people to make bad ones. A large body of research suggests that many bad decisions are the result of errors in judgment that originate in the human mind's limited capacity and in the natural biases that managers unconsciously display during decision making. And so our textbook talks about um, anchoring bias. This occurs when we allow initial impressions, statistics, and estimates to act as anchors to our subsequent thoughts and judgments. So, managers can be influenced by initial impressions. And so, what we're looking at here is awareness of the following, these 6 biases that we're talking about can help managers make more enlightened and better decisions. And so, we don't want to just be influenced by our initial impressions. We don't want to justify past decisions. So many managers fall into the trap of making choices that justify their past decisions, even if those decisions no longer seem valid. Loss of aversion is a stronger response to a potential loss than to an expected gain. Then, seeing what you want to see. People frequently look for information that supports their existing instinct or point of view, and this can lead to confirmation bias, which occurs when a manager puts too much value on evidence that is consistent with a favored belief or viewpoint and discounts evidence that contradicts it. And so then you can also move to the next, which is perpetuating the status quo, in which managers may base decisions on what has worked in the past and may fail to explore new options, dig for additional information, or investigate new technologies. Managers can also go into the bias of being influenced by emotions. If you've ever made a decision when you were angry, upset, or extremely happy, you might already know the danger of being influenced by emotions. And then finally, being overconfident. Most people overestimate their ability to predict uncertain outcomes. The managers at a fast food chain were sure that low employee turnover was the key driver of customer satisfaction, store profitability, so they decided to invest in programs that kept employees happy. However, when they analyzed store data, they found that some locations with high turnover were highly profitable, while some with low turnover were struggling. Overconfidence can be particularly dangerous when making risky decisions. That brings us to section 6.6, innovative decision making. First, the ability to make fast, widely supported, high-quality decisions on a frequent basis is a critical skill in today's fast-moving organizations. You must first start with brainstorming. Brainstorming uses face-to-face interactive group to spontaneously suggest as many ideas as possible for solving a problem. Brainstorming has been found to be highly effective for quickly generating a wide range of alternatives, but it does have some drawbacks. One drawback is people in a group often want to conform to what others are saying, and this can lead to groupthink. Others may be concerned about pleasing the boss or impressing colleagues. In fact, one study found that when 4 people are asked to brainstorm individually, they typically come up with twice as many ideas as a group of 4 brainstorming together. So one approach that has helped with this and helped take advantage of the group approach while overcoming some of the disadvantages is electronic brainstorming. This brings people together in an interactive group over a computer network. Studies show that electronic brainstorming generates about 40% more ideas than individuals brainstorming alone, and 25 to 200% more ideas than regular brainstorming groups, depending on the size. The reason is because this approach is anonymous. And so you don't know who's making what suggestions. And so, and another advantage of this is that the electronic brainstorming can be done with groups made up of employees from all around the world, which further increases the diversity of alternatives. Secondly, you can use hard evidence. Evidence-based decision making is a commitment to make more informed and intelligent decisions based on the best available facts and evidence. Then you can also engage in rigorous debate. This ensures group diversity. And our textbook talks about some groups assign a devil's advocate. This is a person that is assigned the role of challenging the assumptions and assertions made by the group. The reason you would want somebody to do that is so that it causes everybody to think and rethink about what solutions and alternatives are being presented, and it causes us to rethink and evaluate, would this really be a good decision? And then finally, then we go to avoid groupthink. Groupthink is the tendency of people in groups to suppress contrary opinions. When people slip into groupthink, the desire for harmony outweighs concerns over decision quality. Know when to bail. Escalating commitment is continuing to invest time and money in a solution even when there's strong evidence that it is not appropriate. Sometimes you've got to know when to cut your cords, cut your ties, and say, this isn't working, let's bail. Do a pre-mortem and post-mortem. Post-mortem, or after-action review, is a disciplined procedure whereby managers invest time in reviewing the results of decisions on a regular basis and learn from them. Pre-mortem is purposely imagining a decision has been implemented and has failed miserably, and then identifying reasons for the failure so that the problematic issues can be addressed in advance. Knowledge check 2. Which of the following techniques uses a face-to-face group to spontaneously suggest a broad range of alternatives for decision making? A. Groupthink. B. Point-counterpoint. C. Devil's advocate. Or D. Brainstorming. The correct answer is D. Brainstorming. This brings us to the end of Chapter 6 in our discussion this week on managerial decision making. I want to remind you to make sure that you read Chapter 6. Also, make sure that you complete your discussion board post and then respond to at least 2 of your classmates' discussion board posts. I hope each of you has a blessed week this week. And as always, if you need anything, please feel free to reach out to me via email, and I will answer and help you in any way that I can. Thank you and have a blessed week.